All right, we'll go ahead and get started. So part 7, we're a little over halfway now. Revelation 13 and 14. So these, especially 13, I think is what a lot of people think about when they think of Revelation. It's kind of some of the most familiar scriptures, the most familiar passages that we'll see. And so hopefully we'll go in detail. Me and him were talking, there's a lot here, but it's sort of straightforward. But at the same time, a lot of this is explained later on in Revelation. So if you feel like we kind of gloss over something, odds are it's because we'll come back to it in a few lessons. So let's go ahead and start reading. Chapter 13, verse 1, and we'll read just a few verses. It says, "I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads, 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns. And upon his head a black. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death. And his deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him?" So we see this beast out of the sea, and I think most commentary will tell you, most people agree with this is what we know as the Antichrist. And it gives us a lot of information here. Some of that imagery we've covered before in this study. 7 heads, 10 horns, 10 crowns. We talked about that in Revelation 12 last time, and we'll go more in depth in chapter 17. It kind of reveals, we know it's a worldly system, but it goes into specific details, kind of how that unfolds and what that looks like a little later. So Tim, anything we'll add right here?
Well, we'll get into there's a belief, it's a Christian belief, it's a sect of Christianity called preterism that we'll go into a little bit. I won't do that yet. I think we're going to talk about that later. In between. Sort of, for me, the main point of these next 2 chapters, or the main kind of theme that is mimicry, a mimicking of God's plan. You have of course, you have Christ, and now you see an Antichrist. You're going to see another beast here in a minute that's going to be sort of a anti-Holy Spirit. And the dragon, of course, Satan, is anti-God. So you're going to see Satan, as he has always done, he wants to be God, so he mimics God. He is a fraud trying to emulate God. So kind of watch out for that symbolism as we move along. The things that happen, even like when we're dealing with this wound here, you know, Christ died, was resurrected, went to sit on the right hand of God. Well, even the Antichrist is going to have something happen, I think, to his person, that it's going to appear as if he were dead and then resurrected. So he can say, I'm God. Yeah. That's the only thing I would add at this point.
So you see, also, the next thing it kind of says there is leopard, bear, lion. It says he's like unto a leopard, feet like a bear, mouth like a lion. That's a reference to Daniel 7. We covered that a couple times ago. But really what this is telling us is that the way Daniel saw these rulers and these worldly systems, he saw these empires. What John is seeing is a beast that is all of those and even greater. And that's really what he's showing us here.
Yeah, that's your heads and horns correlate directly to nation, kings, and kingdoms, however you want to think about that. Powers that be.
Yep. And then his ultimate power comes from the dragon, which we know is Satan. And that's where it all comes from. And like Tim said, this is all about mimicry. How there is a holy trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. We're seeing that here at play. And we're also seeing things down to like the resurrection. It says he appeared to be unto death, the wound unto death, but he came back. And that causes the world to wonder after him. So that's a steady theme we'll see through this. And then ultimately, the world worshipped him. And that's what it's all about. If you remember, as we went through this study, after every seal judgment, and after the vials, after all these things, God is, he's asking for repentance, and they repented not. And then this guy comes on the scene and they worship. Just hook, line, and sinker. They take the bait. And I think it's interesting there. If I can go back here, let's see. It says in verse 4, it says, and they worship the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him. And me and Tim was talking about that this week. The way this words it kind of makes me think, these people are following a man, the beast. What they don't realize is because they worship him, they're really worshiping the dragon. They're worshiping Satan, and it's a trap of the enemy. I don't think if you could fast forward in time and pull out somebody that, let's say they took the mark that we know we'll get to here in a minute, I don't think they probably wouldn't tell you they're worshiping Satan. But that's exactly what they're doing, because they've fallen into that trap that the enemy's laid. All right, so let's go forward here. This is just some more details about this same beast, starting in verse 5. It says, and there was given to him a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given to him to continue 42 months. So that should sound familiar.
It's important, yeah.
And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. So, what's this telling us? He's a great speaker. And I think one of the things interesting for me, it says he speaks great things and blasphemies. And I think when I've read this in the past, I've been guilty, especially early on. You read that sentence, he speaks great things and blasphemies, and my mind almost consolidates it to just say, well, he's speaking great blasphemies. But that's really not what it's saying. It says he speaks great things. Naturally, things sound good. He may have good plans. He may have things that make people want to follow him. But he's double-tongued, right? He also speaks blasphemies. That's what comes with those great things. Once he pulls you in, you see his true motives. And that's why discernment is so important. Again, you have 42 months, 3.5 years. We know things are happening in these cycles. We have this big 7-year period that's broken down into 2 3.5-year periods. So,
I think the order to which the statement Clifton's talking about is written matters here. Mm-hmm. It says, and there were given unto him a mouth speaking great things, 1, and blasphemies, 2. I think when he comes upon the world stage, the world's going to be in such a disarray that they're willing to accept anything. And this man is going to appear to have all the answers. He's going to be speaking about how he can fix this thing and that thing and the economy and make people safe and do all these different things to make the world a better place. That's your great things. Once he assumes the power and they give him the control to do those great things, then the blasphemies are going to occur. I think that's how he gets to where he can speak those blasphemies openly, is through speaking great things first.
Yep. And then ultimately, we see after these blasphemies, it goes kind of from speaking to he actually makes war with the saints, and that's what it's all about. It's Satan's final attempt to overthrow God, Jesus, and ultimately his church. And that's what we'll see. And I think what's interesting is the whole world follows him, besides those that's written in the book of life. And I think, just imagine today, and I assume, we know this is some point tomorrow or today in the future when all this unfolds, and this is how bad things are now, but I assume it's going to get worse. But just now, if somebody could come along that the whole world agreed upon was a good guy, how hard would that be?
Yeah.
But this guy's going to do it. So imagine what great things he really must have to say. And that's going to be an amazing thing. And I think you really have to be in tune with God to not wonder after it. I think it says that the world wondered after that beast. So that's why we have to know who we are, and we have to have our minds made up. I'm going to follow Jesus and nothing else.
Yeah, this guy's going to be like nothing that's ever been before, as far as being able to speak and convince and provide logic and explanation for what he's doing. Because, if you want to narrow that down, say how, we're in the United States, say how hard it would be to get the entire United States to
Just
agree.
us, yeah.
And it's almost impossible. Well, then say, what about the state we're in, the state of Kentucky, how hard would it be? It's almost impossible.
Yeah.
dial it down to your county, down to your city.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's hard to convince a few people to all be on the same page 100%, but this guy's going to convince the whole entire world.
You know, I think it's easy for us to lie to ourselves and say, well, you know, maybe just all, like, let's just say the United States, all of one party will believe him and the other side won't. That's not what it says. It says the only people that won't are the people that are saved. And that's not just, I mean, churches are filled with people that's not saved. I mean, it's really the people that are real believers, that are born again, names in the book of life. That's the only people that's not going to follow after this guy. And I think that's just amazing to think everybody's going to say, that's the one we've been waiting on.
And that percentage will be so small that it will shock everybody that realizes.
Yeah.
And those people will be hunted and tortured, and terrible things will follow.
It makes war with them to kill them. And we'll raise another question. Well, let's just raise it now. Okay. 3.5 years. The tribulation has started when this Antichrist took power. He's took power at this point. It says he makes war with the saints. Does that not have to mean the saints are here? You know what I'm saying? I mean, and I've always said, I don't know when the rapture is, and I hope it's pre-trib. But this seems like the church is here, at least for part of it. So I don't know. Like I said, I hope there's just something I'm not understanding. If somebody knows more than me, I'm open to hear it because I want to hear the logic. But it just seems to me the church is here to make war with it. Somebody has to be there for them because it seems like a literal war to me.
It appears to me, at the very best,
Mid.
we live, well, slightly after mid.
Yeah.
At the very best, and I, from what I read here, suspect closer to end.
Yeah, it may be.
I'm like Clifton. I'm open to, I'm not saying I'm right or that we're right. I'm just saying that from what we've read and studied thus far.
Yeah, if he's at power at this point 3.5 years and he starts to make war with the saints have to be here. You know what I'm saying? That's in my mind.
And once Christ comes, which we'll get there,
Yeah.
there is no second rapture. There's only one.
Yeah.
So you're gone. We're all gone
Yeah.
when that happens.
And if you are able to be saved after, and like I said, I don't know, that's into deep theology, like, can you be saved after the rapture? I hope so. There's probably arguments you can make yes and arguments you can make no, but it's going to be hard to do. I mean, it's going to be...
Well, instead of living for Christ as we all attempt at and fail now, it's going to be dying for Christ then.
Yeah. You have to be willing to be the martyr.
Yeah. Because that, I think, will be the only...
Yeah. All right, so let's go for it. These next verses, they seem kind of separated. It's almost a break between the first beast and the second. But I think it speaks to kind of what we're saying right now. It's just what all the saints have to endure here. Verse 9 says, "And if any man have an ear, let him hear." Whoops. And it says, "He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." I really think that last sentence summarizes it.
Yep.
Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Are you going to be faithful in hard times? And that's all I put here. It's just these saints are able to overcome persecution. They're able to hold on. Maybe not naturally they don't overcome. They may die. There's going to be people who die for the cause of Christ during this. A lot of people. But are they faithful? And if you are, you've overcame. Right? That natural death means nothing. So anything you want to add for these two scriptures?
Got it.
All right. So let's go to the second beast here, starting in verse 11, and we'll read, I guess, down to the end of the chapter. It says this. It says, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. And he exerciseth all the power of the first beast before him, and causeth the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And he doeth great wonders, so that he maketh fire come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men, and deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast, which had the wound by a sword and did live. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, save he had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. So, this beast from the earth, what most like will refer to kind of nice and neat as the false prophet. And I guess the way I summarize this is he makes kind of the natural look supernatural. He makes this man look almost divine, and he kind of works miracles. So.
Yeah, and so here we have the called the prophet, but you sort of the representation of the Holy Spirit. It can do miracles. It can do wonderful, amazing things. They're all false, but that helps the beast to deceive the world. An interesting thought I had while we were just sitting here reading these verses is all throughout the Bible, sort of God's main focus to his people is don't have idols. Mm-hmm. I'm God. Nothing else is God. Don't make any other image at all. Pray and worship me. You see the perfection of idolatry occur right here. Mm-hmm. It is now the image, the idol, instead of being stiff, deaf, dumb, made out of stone or wood, is speaking, talking, and moving. I think that struck me as interesting there, that the same problem that they had in the very beginning is the same problem here. Idolatry.
We spent some time talking about kind of what this image could be, because it kind of makes it seem like this image is moving, speaking, doing things. To John, a TV would be that.
Yeah.
But we talked about things like holograms or some kind of technology, but just something to where it almost makes it seem to me like there's a law that when you see this man, you're worshiping. I almost think back to Nebuchadnezzar's idol,
And there's going to be some representation of
Babylon, coming up. But it's just that type of thing to where you have to either fall in line or get out.
Yeah.
That's what it is. And like I said, this is the man that kind of causes people to worship the Antichrist. And there was something stood out, and I didn't mark it in my notes, but let me see if I can go back and find it here okay, all the way back to the verse one. It says, look what it says here. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns, and it says, like a lamb, and he spake as a dragon. That like a lamb really kind of pricked my heart when I was studying that this week. That's kind of the image of Jesus that we see, this lamb. Mm-hmm. And I've wondered, does that mean this person comes out of the church, leaves the church to follow the Antichrist? Is he, a mega pastor or somebody that's well known in the church, a pope or whatever? Is he somebody that come out of the church? That like a lamb made it seem like that to me, and saying, you know what? I've been telling you this guy's the Messiah, talking about Jesus, but it's really this guy. This is the one we need to follow. Yeah. And it just, I don't know, maybe I'm off, but it just seems that way to me.
Thing to pay attention to there in the Bible, especially all throughout your reading, is pay attention to capitalization. Mm-hmm. A capital letter at the beginning of a word signifies importance. Yeah. And if you read right there, lamb is lowercase.
Not
here in a minute, lamb. We're going to read, and it's going to be uppercase. Yeah. That means a completely different entity. Yeah. Everybody knows who that is, but
when that says like a lamb, not
seemingly the lamb.
And I think that speaks to even what we just said a while ago. Every church isn't filled with saved people, right? Most probably have people within the walls that are saved and some that are not. just the way it is. So there's going to be somebody leave and say, you know what, he was like the Lamb. We went through the motions, but it really wasn't the real thing. The name wasn't in the book of life. So I guess that gets us to the next thing, really, and that's the kind of one of the biggies is this mark of the beast.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and who is the man?
Yeah. So what we know is it's connected both to the individual, but it's also tied to the economy. So anything.
To go back to the very beginning, and everybody tries to figure out who this man is.
Yeah.
And there are certain groups of Christianity and certain other faiths and religions that say this man has already occurred long ago. For Christians, John especially, during the time in which this is written, the Roman Empire would have been what they could have potentially viewed as the Antichrist. And not just the Roman Empire, but a specific emperor. It's called Preterism. This is a Christian belief. It's a sect of Christianity. That Nero was the Antichrist. He was called the Beast. If you read about the 10 horns and the heads, that directly can correlate to the men that came before him that ruled Rome. He persecuted Christians. Me and Clifton thought one of the most brutal things I've ever read is he would take Christians and crucify them at night. And the reason he crucified them at night was so that he could set them on fire to let their light shine. Pretty brutal. Him and another emperor right after him did away with there was a rule of the Romans that they viewed an emperor once dead to be a god. They were a god in death. And it was like a modesty type thing for the emperor. Instead of saying, I'm a god, while I'm alive, they waited until they were dead to say, I'm a god. They did completely away with that rule and claimed to be God while alive. Wow. Essentially worship me. They had worshipers. Even their coinage showed crowns that had 7 horns, all kinds of things that matched perfectly with Nero. I don't feel like Nero was the Antichrist. As Clifton and I were talking and studying this, you see evil men all throughout time. Like, look at Hitler and what he did to God's people. Look at that persecution. I feel like he was an Antichrist. But much how we've been speaking about mimicry of not only God's Holy Trinity, I think we see mimicry of the Bible right here. I think in Nero, in Hitler, in various other evil men throughout time who have persecuted Christianity and or God's people, you see proto-antichrists, just the same as in the Old Testament you read about proto-Christs.
I think it's just what Daniel said. I think he said there's going to be this whole series of empires that's going to come. They're all going to have different traits, but they all have the same goal, and that's to wipe out God's people. Yeah. Whether that was Daniel's time when he's talking about Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar, whether that would be the Persians that would come, or the Syrians, or the Greeks, it's kind of in those silent years. But when we see Jesus, the Roman Empire, which would have been Nero, Nero would have been really probably right after Jesus' time when he took power through the lifespan of John. But even going forward, you see that. And all, like you said, all the way up to Hitler, and even today, there's enemies to the cause of Christ.
Yeah. I forgot to mention Nero also ruled 42 months. That was another thing. Like, he lines up really well with this wordage. And to me, in studying this, I said, well, why would Satan continually pick the ones that aren't the Antichrist? Well, as I studied and read, I realized, I said, God is omnipresent. He knows everything from beginning to end. He can be anywhere in time that he wants to be at any point in time, and he knows it all at any time. Mm-hmm. Well, Satan does not. He's just an angel. So what happens here is Satan does not know the true end of the story. He's locked out from that. So what he does is he fosters that evil spirit in every man as far as he possibly can, to potentially create an Antichrist at any time.
Yeah, he wants us to
it
be
now.
the Antichrist.
Right.
If he could push you that far, he would.
He wanted Jesus to be that.
Yes.
When he tempted Jesus in the wilderness, that's what he was trying to get him to do, become that mouthpiece for Satan. And he refused, of course, because that's God's only begotten Son. But I think that's why we see multiple, you say, well, it has to be one of them. Well, no, it doesn't. He's going to continually try until he succeeds in finding his true Antichrist. God will allow that to occur because that's God's plan.
So let me find, hold this for just a second. Let me make sure, 1 John, I think I'm going to read the right one, I'm going to read it. But 1 John 2 and 18, it says this, and I think this speaks to what we're saying. It says, little children, it is the last time, as you have heard, that Antichrist shall come. So that's Antichrist singular. It says, even now, there are many Antichrists. So that speaks to what Tim's saying. That spirit has always been here. And it says, whereby we know that it is the last time. And it goes on to say, and maybe even Thessalonians says, but there is one coming that's greater than all these. And so that's what we're seeing here in this image of these beasts. And ultimately, the mark is kind of, I think it's just that culmination. It's that sealing. And the way I almost read these chapters is, we can talk about various scriptures. No man can serve two masters, right? This is that final line in the sand. Hey, you're going to have my mark, or the mark's going to be in the book of life. Which one you want?
Pick this day.
Pick this day. That's what it's all about.
And you will follow.
Anything with this chapter before we go forward?
No, I mean, other than maybe, the mark could be anything. It could be technological. It could be spiritual. Yeah. Talks about, hand and forehead. But if you notice all throughout the Bible, the symbolism of a brand in the head is symbolic of who owns you, so to speak. Yeah. God brands his people. We're going to see that here.
Yeah. I just think I think it has to be something somewhat tangible, because it controls who's able to buy.
It's natural.
Yeah, it's a natural thing that really happens. But like I said, it's just connected so much. It identifies you both, like the economy-wise, but also who you are, who you serve. It's just, I don't know. We toss around some ideas. I've always thought, just if you took just 666 at its most literal and added 360 together, that's 18 numbers. Our Social Security number is what? 7 or 8 numbers? How many is it? 4, 3, 9. 9 numbers. So it's 9 numbers. And that's just with people in the United States that's been born or ever been born. If you have a global government, maybe it's a number that identifies you in that government that's 18 numbers. And you have something that you can hold in your hand, but if that number is going to determine whether you're able to buy food for your family, you're going to know that number, so it's going to be in your head too. So I don't know what it could be.
Maybe not a physical mark, but a memorization.
Yeah,
I mean, we were talking about it could be something so simple as your cell phone.
Cell phone, yeah.
In your pocket that you have. I'm not saying go throw your iPhone away, or maybe go throw your iPhone away. I mean, you'd probably be better for it if you did. But you can hold this cell phone up.
Yeah. Have all kinds of information.
Up where we can see it good. Put it on your forehead or in your hand as you show it to somebody to be able to buy and sell.
Tons of stuff.
Tons of things. We're not saying it's any of those.
No, it's just, I knew somebody, went to high school with her grandma. She would, last I heard, never would go through the self-checkout at Walmart. She was convinced that was the mark, the self-checkout. That was it. So I don't know what it'll be, but I do know this, that it's a life and death decision. And I don't think, here's why I don't think we'll take the mark by accident.
No.
I think our spirit, if we're saved, it will speak to you and say, hold it right there.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing.
And you'll know it'll be such a singular thing,
Yeah.
because like use the self-checkout, for example. Like there's ways around a self-checkout you can still buy and sell.
Yeah.
But when this occurs,
It's
it.
Yeah.
It's the only way.
all right. So let's go to chapter 14. It says this. We're going to read, 5 verses here to start. It says, I looked, and lo, a lamb, uppercase L, stood on the Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the 4 beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. These are they which follow the Lamb, whithersoever he goeth. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. So, this 144,000, if you remember back a few months ago, Revelation 7,
Yep.
this is the same, or at least we believe it to be the same 144,000, which if you remember, comes directly out of the nation of Israel.
Yeah, 12 tribes.
12,000 from each of the 12 tribes. So,
There's some, yet again, we talked about capitalization. Here, when we're talking about Lamb, that's capital letter. That's Jesus. And whenever, let's see here. These people have never been defiled in any way, form, or fashion. They follow Christ wherever he goes. It's interesting to me that it calls them the first fruits. Mm-hmm. The first.
Yep.
The very first. They're redeemed out of the earth. So, to me, when me and Clifton were talking about, and we go back to like when the trip occurs and all those things, and it's interesting that they're called first fruits here, as if nobody has been redeemed yet until these are redeemed.
Yep.
Something maybe to think about, especially as we move forward and read some other things here.
I just wondered, could this be something that's happening kind of like at the moment of the rapture? Like these 144,000 from Israel, these Jewish people that have been sealed, have come to the knowledge of Jesus. Is it something special given to them, at the time of rapture for the church? I don't know.
Yeah, it happens in Mount Zion. It's called Zion here, but it's Mount Zion. That's Jerusalem. It's always, whenever you see that, that's what that means, the holy mountain.
Yep.
So I'm like Clifton. I think that as this is occurring, as these 144,000 in Christ appear in Jerusalem, that we're leaving. Mm-hmm. I suspect it's all happening at the same time. Because in order for Christ to return, that's what he's coming back for, is us.
Yep.
So it has to all kind of occur at the same time. I don't think the 144,000 in Christ can appear on earth before we're raptured out.
And I almost think this could be like a kind of a summary of everything. Like this may even be like after the next 3.5 years. It's just when he's actually coming to earth. Because it almost seems like here is when he actually steps foot on earth to set up the millennial reign.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's when the rapture happens, that we go all the way through tribulation. I don't think that really. I still kind of lean mid. But, the timing of this event is not sure. We just know this is the 144,000 we talked about.
Well, I can't think of the actual verses, but it talks about, that he'll set foot upon the mountains and the mountains will melt.
Yeah.
And be made low. I think that imagery is this. I think that's I think when he sets foot on earth again, like he's not coming back as a lowly servant. He's coming back as the King of Kings. Yeah, the most powerful thing to ever exist here.
Yeah, it's who John probably thought he was going to see in his lifetime. It's that Christ, I think until John probably had this vision on Revelation, he probably really thought he was going to see Christ come back as a conqueror.
Well, the disciples, when they were with Christ, thought it was going to happen while they were with him.
Yeah. That was, I think, part of their struggle. Was they were keeping expecting, when are we going to take over? And then he starts talking about dying. They're like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Dying, And I mean, that would be hard, to think.
Could have been part of why Peter said what he said to him. No, Lord, no, you're not going to die. Because he was thinking, this guy's going to be a king. Our king can't die. I'm going to tell him he can't. And then he's like, well, wait a minute now.
Yeah. I'll follow you to the end of the earth, But that's why he thought he was a king. And he is, but it's just in his time, you know what I'm saying? Yep. He wants to redeem man. That's the goal. All right, so let's go forward. Verse 6 says, and I saw another angel. So we're going to see 3 angels here. It says, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and every nation, and kindred, and tongue, and people, saying with a loud voice, fear God, and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation, and he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone, and in the presence of the holy angels, and in the presence of the Lamb. It says, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. And they had no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. That almost goes back to verse 9 and 10 that we read in the last chapter. It says, here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. So we see three angels. First one is a call for salvation.
Final appeal.
Yeah. The second one is a condemnation of evil. Okay? It's saying, no, these things you're doing are evil. Babylon's fallen. It was evil. This worldly system is evil. And then finally, the sentencing of evil. It's their judgment, right? So, right here.
That's all I had too. You see, it's interesting to me when it talks about they shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture. All throughout history and even today, strong drink is mixed with something else to dilute it. And even punishment for sin at this particular point in time, I feel like is diluted. It's not full strength.
Yeah.
But if you make it to this point and you become one of those worshipers of the beast, you get it full strength. And if you read the rest of that and understand that no rest day nor night, this exists forever, you burn forever, that's it's about as extreme a punishment as can happen. And you also see the symbolism of Babylon here, which we kind of alluded to a little earlier. Babylon, as far as I have studied, they were sort of I'm not going to say they were a world empire, but they sort of were. They were probably the first most powerful empire. So when they went astray, instead of following God, they went sort of the opposite way. They become the spirit of the Antichrist because they're opposing to God's will. So anytime you see Babylon throughout the Bible spoken of, they took God's people into captivity, they did all these terrible things. That's what it means. It's not only a nation, it's also a spirit that's represented there.
One of the things I thought about, I think that makes sense for me, is, if you look at a lot of commentary and you'll say like, all right, what are the characteristics of the Antichrist? A lot of things will say inevitably is it has to maybe come from that old Roman Empire because they were in charge when John wrote this. The way we and people throughout time have compared empires to the Roman Empire, during John's time, they're comparing any empire to the Babylonians because it was so great. They tormented them so much. Just that worldly system that anybody that's contrary to God is Babylon.
You look at the Jews when they came out of Egypt. Egypt to them probably was the most powerful nation they've ever experienced. Yeah. Well, then along come the Babylonians and wipe them out. Yeah. Essentially in multiple battles, but they ruined the Egyptian empire. Yeah. So then, that becomes, oh my gosh, the ones that had us in captivity, these guys are way meaner than those guys. So I think that's why they're viewed that way. And like Clifton said, the way we view the Roman Empire as being the most powerful ancient empire, that hadn't happened yet here. They weren't there yet. So they go back to the Babylonians, which were the same thing.
All right. So, and I think the biggest thing here, and I don't know the time frame over what these three angels appear, but we still see this call for salvation. It's, God is saying, worship me. That's all you have to do. And I don't know, just in reading that, I wondered, are we in that stage now? Because it says they took the mark later on after these second and third angels appear, so I don't know. But right now is when we have a chance to be saved. It's now. Like you said, today's the hour to choose.
Yep.
All right, so let's go forward to the end of the chapter here and get ready to wrap up. It says, and I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, thrust in thy sickle, and reap, for the time is come, for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. That's twofold. It says that he that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another angel came out of the temple, which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. And the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and cast it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. It says, And the winepress was trodden without the city, and blood came out of the winepress, even unto the horse bridles, by the space of 1,600 furlongs. So it's about 200 miles.
It's 180 miles.
Yeah. So you imagine that.
The height of a
river
horse's head.
Yeah. So I mean, it's humongous. This huge. And like I said, I don't know necessarily if that's natural. That's just showing how much wickedness I think was in the earth. It's just there everywhere.
Broad is the way.
Yeah. So there's two harvests here. There's a couple of scriptures that I added in that we're going to read here that I think are describing these same events. Joel 3:11-14 says this. You want very similar images here. It says, Assemble yourselves and come all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Lord. So here, the heathen are gathered, which would mean the saints have left. It says, Let the heathen be wakened, and come up to the valley of Jehoshaphat, for there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come and get you down, for the press is full. The fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of the Lord is near in the valley of decision. That's powerful.
Well, there's significance to one, the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which is also called the Valley of Decision. You know,
Today you have to search.
well, yeah, the other name for that area and location, that's the Battle of Armageddon. It's the Battle of Armageddon. It's all the same thing. It's all in the same place. It's trying to remember. I think it's slightly north of Jerusalem. Is that correct?
Okay.
It's slightly northwest of Jerusalem.
Yeah, I think so.
I may be wrong on that, but you can look it up. Get on Google Earth, type it in. It'll show you right where it's at. So that's what's being described here. So when the final battle of good and evil occurs, that's when this wine press is filled.
And all it really is God's judgment.
It's God's
I don't
judgment.
think it's not much of a battle.
Well, it says he'll destroy him with his mouth.
Yeah. So it's no
I,
fight.
I take that as almost literal,
Instant.
as he's going to speak an end and they'll disappear.
Yeah. Revelation 6 also describes some similar events here. It says, And when he had opened the fifth seal, I saw under the altar the souls of them that were slain for the word of God, and for their testimony which they held. It says, And they cried with a loud voice, saying, How long, O Lord, holy and true, doest thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? And the white robes were given to every one of them, and it was said unto them that they should rest yet for a little season, until their fellow servants also, their brethren, that should be killed, as they were, should be fulfilled. So there's two harvests here. The first one, the rapture. He pulls the saints out. Any that's left that's not died. But, it would seem to say, all right, rapture's there, let's just end time. But there has to be justice.
A reckoning, yeah.
And that last harvest is of the martyr's blood. It's judgment upon evil. If there is no good left, then the ultimate, he's going to, like it says, it's all of God's wrath. His judgment is going to be on these people that are left and upon the Antichrist and this whole system. And it says the martyrs cry out, when are we going to be avenged? I think we could go back even to Revelation 13 and 10. It says, he lived by the sword, you're going to die by the sword. If you naturally persecuted God's church, there's going to be a natural punishment. It's not just the hell and hereafter. All it's going to come to reckon right here. And it's
both
what
sides,
we see.
spiritual and natural.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really why we see tribulation. It's why time just doesn't wrap up. There has to be a judgment here on earth of this whole system that's been in place.
Yeah, and to me, God has a limit on which he will allow his people to be destroyed.
And he reaches it right here.
And he reaches it. And that's why you talk about the blood and how much, because it says to be fulfilled. It's like somewhere there's something measuring, and it's filling up over time as Christians are killed, murdered, tortured, and all these things are happening. It's filling up. It's filling up. And once it gets to the top, this judgment occurs. I think that's what sets it all in place and starts the whole thing.
And I think the biggest thing really to close with is what I said there, even in Joel. It said, in the valley of decision. You know, we're in that valley of decision right now in our life. We have the luxury of living in a time when no matter how bad things are in our life, we can serve God.
Yeah.
It's not like the things we're reading about right now.
No.
So decide today to serve Jesus. That way our future is secure.
Yeah. You know, live for him today because you have the freedom to live for him today.
Yeah.
You know, there'll come a day, we may be here, we may not be here, that we'll have to die for him.
Yep.
So prepare yourself now in living for him to die for him someday.
All right. I believe we're done.